Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Gains for Girls podcast. Still on this election high. I don't think it will end until 2025 Inauguration Day when it is sealed, done, and we know that is what our nation's future holds. Very excited for today's guest. His name has been all over the news, all over social media with this buzzing surrounding it. We are talking today to Senator Rick Scott. He's been in the news recently for his hopeful role as the new Senate Majority Leader. They are to vote actually today, this week. So I'm hopeful. I think people were tired. We're tired of leadership, weak leadership from those in the Senate like Mitch McConnell. And so I wholeheartedly support Rick Scott for Senate Majority Leader. Very excited for our conversation today. But before we get into it, got to tell you about XXXY Athletics. If you watch these episodes, if you follow me on social media, you know why I love them. One, their clothing and their apparel is cute. It's quality clothing, but more importantly, their clothing sends a message that I want to speak and wear very proudly. And that is that biological reality exists. It is that your God-given sex is immutable. So I encourage everyone to go to thetruthfits.com, check out their apparel. They've got men's, they've got women's, great right around holiday time too. These make great gifts. I've got a code for you to use. If you use code RileyG20, you can get some percentage off at checkout. So again, RileyG20 at thetruthfits.com. Check them out. And now we are going to get into our conversation with the hopeful new Senate Majority Leader, now Senator Rick Scott. Well, Senator Scott, thank you so much for joining the Gains for Girls podcast. Before we get into anything, this week we had Veterans Day, and so I wanted to thank you for your service. We are, people like me, we are indebted to people like you who fought for our freedoms. So thank you, number one. But I've got to ask you, we're coming off a big election, both presidential in the Senate, the House. It was a blowout on all accounts. And so I've got to ask you, how are you feeling?
It's exciting. Election night was exciting. We know that Trump had his agenda. He clearly got a mandate, right? So it was exciting. It was an exciting night. So we won in my state. We won Miami-Dade by 10 points. We won Osceola County, which is primarily Puerto Rican, by 2 points. We won the county that Tampa's in, the county that St. Pete's in, the county that Jacksonville's in. We won 61 of 67 counties. It was a blowout. You know why we won? Because people want a different agenda than the Democrats. I tell people, why I'm doing this is I want every kid to have the same opportunity to live the dream that I had. Born to a single mom, lived in public housing growing up, and my mom could legitimately tell me there was no limitation if I worked my butt off. And so I've tried a lot of things in my life. I've built companies, ran for governor, now ran for the Senate. So everything's doable. If that's true for every little boy and girl in this country, what a hell of a country it is.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Florida's progression over the past 10, 12 years or so, which I live in Tennessee, a very red state. But what I've noticed in my home state is we have an influx of people who have moved in from places like California or New York or Michigan or Illinois. And I know Florida is the same. And so I don't know if you've had the opportunity to talk with some of these people who have moved to Florida, but I mean, again, my experience is it almost appears as if they're refugees, right? And they acknowledge themselves as such.
Yeah, I think it's positive selection. People are coming to Tennessee because of their freedom, their rights, and because it's a Republican state. They're coming to Florida because because of our freedom. We don't have big government mandates. We understand your individual rights. We believe in your individual rights. And so I think that's why people are moving to places like Tennessee and to Florida. So it's exciting. Think about this. When I got elected in 2010 as governor, there were 568,000 more registered Democrats. This election, wow, there are over 1 million more registered Republicans. So people have come in and they said the Republican way of life is better for their families. It's better for their kids. It's better for their grandkids. Because I think here's what people care about. They care about their job. They care about their kids' education. And they care about public safety. Guess what? Tennessee is a great state for that. I actually lived in Tennessee, lived in Nashville for a while. It's a great city. And Florida is like that. We're number one in higher education, top 5 in K-12 education. And when I left, we were a 47-year low in our crime rate. So it's the things that people care about. And that's why they're moving to Tennessee. They're moving to Florida and places like that.
No doubt. No doubt. I think another key issue, I believe it was a key issue in the elections, again, on all fronts, presidential, House seats, and in the Senate, especially in the Senate, actually, was the common sense issue of keeping men out of women's sports, which you have been key on. You've been key on the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. You signed on to the letter headed by Senator Blackburn to the NCAA, urging them to update their policies. You voted in favor, of course, of the Protection of Women and Girls in Olympic and Amateur Sports Act, but really all to no prevail as the Senate voted entirely on party lines, which I don't believe it would have mattered much anyways, considering I think we both know the actions that President Biden would have taken if a common sense bill like this reached his desk. But do you think now, with a majority in both the House and the Senate, that this is something that can get to President Trump's desk come 2025?
Well, if the Democrats don't support it, they're pretty foolish. It's pretty common sense that we shouldn't have men playing in women's sports. I mean, it's I raised 2 daughters. I have 6 grandsons and a granddaughter, right? And look, think about how much time people put in, like my friend Donna DeVerona put in to make sure there was women's sports in college, right? I mean, it was decades to get that done. And now all of a sudden the Democrats say, oh, yeah, we'll still have that, but we'll let boys win all the medals. So I think it's common sense. I hope the Democrats have figured this out. It was a horrible issue for the Democrats. There's so many people, I think, voted over that one issue that hopefully the Democrats will understand it. And we've got it takes 60 votes to pass legislation over here, but we're going to have 53 Republicans now, so it'll take 7 Democrats to say, you know what, this is pretty much common sense. Why don't we should pass this?
Why is it so partisan? I mean, again, I think for your everyday American, we see the harm. We see the trajectory of where this is leading us. We see how this is unsafe. We see it's unfair, not to mention the privacy aspect in the locker room. And similar, I agree with you in saying that I think this got a lot of people who would call themselves lifelong liberals to vote for the Republican nominees. So why? I mean, is it fear, do you think? Do you think they actually believe this? I just can't wrap my mind around it.
I don't. They can't explain a lot of their policies. They can't explain. Most of the stuff we do up here should not be partisan. Having a secure border, yeah, that's pretty good for Democrats too, not just Republicans. Making sure women's sports are women's sports, that shouldn't be very partisan. But somehow they've made it that way. It's like the radicals in the Democrat Party run the party now. But hopefully they got trounced in this election. So hopefully there's going to be common sense for Democrats that come and say, you know what, that makes sense. We ought to pass that bill. I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen. What my goal is, one of my goals of being the leader is, let's figure out how to do common sense things. When I was governor, what I did is I did common sense things that, they're not repealing them because they made all the sense of the world, even though I've been gone for 6 years. And so that's what we should be doing up here. What are some common sense things we can get done? Like we shouldn't be sending federal dollars to schools that don't protect women's sports. I mean, why did we pass the legislation to make sure we had women's sports if we're not going to make them women's sports?
You know what I would love to see is legislation that codifies and defines words like woman in law, words like, I mean, we've seen how words, you mentioned Title IX even, how these words like sex and gender identity have become conflated, and we have these unelected bureaucrats and officials who use these words interchangeably, words we've never had to define because we never knew we needed to, or that we would ever need to. But here we are. We've seen talks of it in the House. I believe it was Representative Lesko and Diana Harshbarger. But I think this is something that could be incredibly effective. I think 9 states have done this now, and I think it would be huge if it could be done federally. But I wanted to ask you, we've seen lots of buzz around your name on social media in the mainstream news recently for acquiring the Senate Majority Leader position, which I believe you are suited to do. You are fit to do. You are someone who has led incredibly effectively and successfully. And so I want you to be able to make the case, why do you think this is something that is a role that you could fill?
Well, the election's tomorrow. They've rushed the election to 1 week after, 1 week and 1 day after the general election, which is a mistake. We should take more time to do this. But the election is tomorrow. And here's what I tell people. Trump won. He got a mandate. We've got to elect a leader in the Senate that's going to help him get his mandate done. So one, I 100% support what Donald Trump is doing. That's number one. Number two, I'm a business guy. We get our stuff done because we create processes and we bring people along to get it done. We build teams. We have a plan. We have timelines, responsibility. We recalibrate if something's not working and we get it done. And so that's what I'll do as a majority leader, whether it's getting Trump's nominees done, which we've got to get done. Chuck Schumer's going to try to slow that down, or the legislation he needs to make sure we repair the damage that Democrats have done in this country. I will do everything I can to get those things done as majority leader. So that's why I'm running. I believe in this country. I believe in our Constitution. I live the dream. I want every child to have the chance to live the dream.
I think it was the Heritage Action Scorecard. You scored a 92%, while the other two who are in the mix scored in the 30s. And so it seems like the people have spoken. We want a Senate Majority Leader like you. And so what are some of the behind the scenes dynamic that go into this vote? I imagine there's lots of pressure internally amongst members of the Senate, maybe swaying their vote.
Well, very few senators have come out and said who they're going to support. Marco Rubio is supporting me, and Tommy Tuberville, and Bill Hagerty, and Rand Paul, and Ron Johnson. I think there's others that said they're going to support me. We'll see. It's a secret ballot, so you never know until it happens, right? It shouldn't be secret. We should all know. Everybody knows how I vote on a judge, how I vote on a bill. They ought to know how everybody votes on the majority leader. But it's probably going to be a secret ballot again tomorrow when we vote on this. So we're going to have a meeting tonight. I'm going to make my pitch to all my colleagues. We're going to have another meeting tomorrow. I'll make my pitch to all my colleagues, and we'll see. I'm making my pitch that this is who I am. I'm a business guy that believes in the Trump agenda, that will get his agenda accomplished, and we'll see if that prevails. I think it will. My colleagues have said they want somebody that wants an agenda, wants to treat them as equals, and they know my background with Trump and with the Speaker of the House. And with the Trump agenda. So I think I'm going to prevail, but we'll see tomorrow.
You mentioned Marco Rubio. Any suggestions as to who DeSantis should appoint to take his seat?
Well, there's a lot of great people. Laura Trump is one person that people have brought up. We've got a lot of congressional members, whether it's Byron Donalds or Kat Kamik or Laurel Lee or Vern Buchanan or Maria Salazar, Corey Mills. We've got so many great Republicans in Florida. We've got some statewide elected like Ashley Moody and Jimmy Patronis and Wilton Simpson. We've got a lot of people that we've watched them perform. So we'll see. It's the governor's choice. So we'll see what happens.
We are so grateful for you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to hop on to discuss your plans. Just know we are cheering for you, supporting you every step of the way. So thank you, Senator Scott.
All right, thanks. Have a great day, and thanks for your support.
Thank you guys for listening to the Gains for Girls podcast. I've gotten to know Senator Scott over the past 2-ish years or so. He's amazing. He's been a fierce and fearless defender of common sense values and legislation, things like keeping men out of women's sports, but also the America First agenda, securing our border, protecting free speech, lowering crime, making our streets safe, lower taxes. I mean, all things that I think most Americans can appreciate and get behind. So we thank him for his service, both as a veteran and both serving in the U.S. Senate. You can check out all things Gains for Girls at OutKick.com. Make sure you like and subscribe. You can share these episodes far and wide. I hope you do. And we will see you again next week. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for watching. The fight to save women's sports and restore common sense is far from over, and I continue the conversation every week. So make sure to catch more content over here and subscribe to OutKick so you don't miss a thing.